saying something crazy. Well, it's maybe not crazy, but whatever. Alex Albon's appendix is ultimately what led to today's video, because we're speaking about Liam Lawson, and the fact that he deserves a seat on the Formula 1 grid full time. He's missed out AlphaTauri for 2024 as they're retaining Tsunoda and Ricciardo, and Williams, by the looks of things, will not be an option, as from what I've seen, Lawson will be Red Bull's reserve and sim driver next year, but my point remains. Lawson should be on the grid full time. He was thrown in at the deep end after Daniel Ricciardo's incident in Zandvoort, given only one practice session, which was ran in tricky conditions ahead of qualifying, which was also in tricky conditions, and the race, which also had tricky conditions. And all of this at one of the more challenging tracks of the season. There were no expectations on him, and he did qualify last, but as I said, nobody really expected much him in that qualifying. Nor were there many expectations on him for the race, but he impressed everyone after putting in a solid drive on his wide to P13, during which he made a very nice overtake on Charles Leclerc. Okay, the Ferrari driver was struggling with a badly damaged car, costing him a lot of pace, admittedly, but an overtake is an overtake, and I'd bet that it was probably a pretty nice feeling for Liam to be making an overtake for position on one of the top drivers on the grid in his first race. Said top driver having a damaged car or not. Next up came the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Now, my expectations were still low, mainly because that AlphaTauri car, it's improved, but it's still not the best. It has improved though. But Lawson built on his debut performance in Zandvoort to have a better weekend in Monza, making Q2 for the first time and ending that qualifying in P12 only a couple of tenths behind Tsunoda. He kept his nose clean on race day as well and put in another solid drive and got his best finish so far at the time when he crossed the finish line in P11, about 6.5 seconds behind the final point taken by Valtteri Bottas. Then we arrived in Singapore, and specifically qualifying in Singapore. Lawson made it to Q2 after getting a late run in before Stroll ended the session at the last corner. In Q2, he was sat in the bottom 5 after the first runs, as was Max Verstappen. And then come the end of the session, said Dutchman in the all-conquering, all-dominating RB19 only went P10 with a lap time of 1 minute 32.173, leaving him in grave danger of being knocked out. Gasly couldn't do it, nor could Albon, and nor could Tsunoda. And then Perez had already been his own chances of making Q3, so he couldn't. But Lawson took one look at the situation and said challenge accepted, before crossing the line to set a lap time 7 milliseconds faster than Verstappen. He made it to Q3 in only his third race weekend at one of the most challenging tracks on the calendar, and had the satisfaction of being the guy that knocked out both Red Bulls in Q2. Or well, made sure both Red Bulls went out in Q2. He lined up P10 on race day and again provided another clean, measured and great drive, but this time, unlike the last two races, he was rewarded with points. It would have been 1 point, but then George Russell binned it on the last lap, and Liam walked away for Singapore with P9, his first points in F1, and he absolutely deserves them. What I think is quite nice about his first points coming in Singapore is that he spoke ahead of the weekend about how he'd always wanted to go to the Singapore Grand Prix when he was a kid, but his parents could never take him. So this time he took his family with him to the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix, and they got to see him become the 6th Kiwi to score points in F1. Then there was Japan last weekend, where he was only a half a tenth off of making a Q3 in qualifying, in what was a rather tight Q2 towards the bottom end of the order. Points did not come his way in the race, but he finished where he qualified in P11, 1 place ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who actually managed to complete more than half a lap for the first time since Zandvoort, who he undercut at the second pit stop after Tsunoda undercut him at the first stop. We even saw those two going wheel to wheel, going at it on the edge in the early stages on the first lap before the safety car came out. Lawson will be driving again this weekend in Qatar, as Red Bull don't want to bring back Ricciardo too soon, but he will not be driving for them full time next year, as Ricciardo and Tsunoda have been retained, as I previously said. And don't get me wrong, that is great. I'm really happy to see them both retained. I always expected Tsunoda to be kept for 2024, as he came out of the gates swinging this year, and he immediately asserted himself as team leader, which I think was crucial for him to do with Gasly leaving the team. Yeah, De Vries coming in, who at the first start of the season we were all expecting high things from him, but you know, then everything kind of went to shit for him. And then Ricciardo, well, we came what he can do in an F1 car. He's a multiple time race winner and pole position sitter. He's got experience in F1, a lot of it, and that experience of F1 and also him being part of AlphaTauri / Toro Alonso / whatever the fuck they're going to be called next season 4 is going to be really big for the team in trying to improve after him falling off the wagon the last couple of years. While it is great to see Ricciardo and Tsunoda staying, it does suck for Lawson missing out on that full-time drive for the moment. By the looks of things, Williams will not be an option, as much as I think perhaps Williams should consider going for the Kiwi over keeping Sargent. I think they're keen on keeping the American, but Sargent is a topic for another day. Lawson will be spending 2024 as reserve and simulator driver for Red Bull, which is really the next best thing to being on the grid full-time and will provide good learning for him. And after all that, he is only 21 years old. He's got time when it comes to getting onto the grid full time. However, this does mean that he'll be first to step up if, say, AlphaTauri need to replace a driver for a weekend, or if there's a driver shuffle mid-season, as it has been said apparently that Daniel Ricciardo will be number 1 in line to replace Sergio Perez if needs be, end of 2024 or mid-season if he isn't performing. And in that case of Ricciardo moving back to Red Bull, Lawson would take the vacant AlphaTauri seat. Red Bull have replaced drivers mid-season before. I'm willing to bet they are not scared to do it again. Getting onto the F1 grid is not easy. There's only 20 seats at the end of the day. Perhaps 22 in a few years' time if F1 lets Andretti, who have been approved by the FIA, which is great to see, into the circus. And there's a number of young drivers coming up who could be or are F1 material. The aforementioned Liam Lawson, Felipe Drugovich, Theo Porcher, Frederick Vesti, Ollie Behrman. That's just to name a few. Of all of them, if only one of them can get into F1, Lawson should be the one, because he's proved that he should be there these past 4 races, and he's also proved he's F1 material on his way up, winning on his F2 debut, on his DTM debut in 2021, where he almost won the championship, and in fact he went into that last race of the DTM season in the lead of the championship, and he won on his Super Formula debut this year, where he's currently only 8 points off championship leader Ritomo Miyata with 1 weekend and 2 races left. My point? If Lawson ain't on the grid full time for 2025, then the system is broken. Either that or the Red Bull Junior program is broken, or both. But as ever, what do you guys think? Are you disappointed that he won't be on the grid next year? And honestly, do you think that Lawson should get that seat at Williams that's currently being occupied by Logan Sargent, who's not signed a new contract yet? I think he probably might. I think Williams are keen to keep him. But would you keep Sargent in that Williams seat, or would you give it to Lawson? Or someone else entirely? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here, and thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.